to Joakim.
Hello and welcome. My name is Joakim. I'm going to do a presentation about Jakob Nielsens 10 usability heuristics for user interface design. So this is the agenda for today. We'll start off with a short introduction about me. Then I'm going to talk about Jakob Nielsen. We're going to talk a bit about usability and then go through the 10 heuristics. And in the end, if there's time, we'll have some questions. So I'm born in Gothenburg in 1988, but I grew up in Helsingborg. Now I live in Malmö, at Värnhem. I studied computer science at Malmö Högskola between 2010 and 2013. After that, I went to Medea Research Lab. They are a lab that collaborate with Malmö Högskola, and they apply for funds to do different projects, and they use developers from the educations, and they have lots of research going on. And after that, I started working at Verisure. It's a security company here in Malmö at Svävarterminalen. Christer's working there now. I worked in a team called My Pages, and we did kind of the website where the user went to do all the settings, and it's also a kind of, you can do more than a generic alarm system. You can turn on lights and turn off lights and use some scheduling on like your home appliances and stuff. They try to incorporate the alarm system into your products you had at home. And I've been with Purple Scout since April 2018. Currently at Playtech, used to be Mobenga. I'm in a team that focuses on doing Ladbrokes, a sports betting site. And I'm currently on that project right now. My free time, I like working out, riding motorcycles with Mackan, for example, and eating hamburgers. So if you know a good place that I haven't tried, maybe give me a hint where to go. So this talk is about Jakob Nielsen, and this is Jakob Nielsen. He's a Danish guy. He studied at Technical University of Denmark in Copenhagen. He's known as like the guru of web page usability, or the king of usability. Like if you studied something with computer science, there's a big chance you know that name. He's published over 10 books about usability, and worked at Sun Microsystems as a usability lead. And today he has his own company that focuses on having educations and events for people that's interested in knowing more about UX. And he wrote these 10 heuristics back in '94, and so it's kind of an old article I based this presentation on, but I think it's still interesting to see like where the baseline was at '94 and if it's still relevant today. And so this is a quote from him: "Usability is a quality attribute that assesses how easy a user interface are to use." So it's basically, users aren't developers, they are users. They use the system in another way than you and I. And they tend not to share the same language, and they just don't have the same way of thinking about stuff as a developer might. So One example could be like a user would go to a coffee shop and they might find it really hard to order like a cup of coffee, because every coffee shop has their own like sizes and way to mix like their own drinks, but they still do it because they are at the shop. It's too much of a hassle to go anywhere else. But going to a website, it's just a click away to go into another site. So it's really important for you as a developer or someone who designs web pages, for example, or systems, that you keep the user on your site and provide them with a good experience. So this is the first heuristics that he wrote. So visibility of system status. This rule is about building interfaces that make the user feel in control of the system, and to keep them informed by giving them appropriate feedback. So in real life that would be like a lamp, for example. You turn it on and off, you see the light going on and off. It's instant feedback. Nobody's questioning like, is this lamp on when you see the light? And you have to like think in that way when you implement sites too, like make a button actually look like a button and clickable, and have some animation, or just change the color of it, or do like small hints to make the user feel in control. Another quote is, a lack of information often equates to lack of control. Like the user needs to feel in control to be happy with the interface that you made. So another example could be a battery indicator on your phone, like it's showing you what battery percentage it has. It kind of tells you like, I'm not going to die in 20 minutes because I have this amount of battery. It shows you its system status. Or a spinner spinning on a website, or a system telling you that the system can't do any more requests at the moment. You have to wait for a while. Or this example, like a loading indicator, showing you how long something will take, so you don't have to wonder. So always make sure the interface communicates clearly and thoroughly with the user. Match between system and the real world. So never assume that our own interpretations and understanding of words or objects match those of our users. So this is kind of what I told you about before. You should implement stuff that's familiar to the user and that they recognize, and speak in a language that the user recognizes. And use similar objects like real world objects. So an example could be like a folder on your computer. That's a pretty basic example, but pretty much everyone knows what a folder is and what you can put in it, and you can rename it and duplicate it and remove it. Or this example, like the save icon, it's been in the like computer world so long that it's kind of standard now. And like kids today, they might not know what a floppy disk is, but they still know it's a save icon. So it's kind of gone full circle. Now the kids today, they see this as a save icon, not as a floppy disk. Also the interaction could be matched between system and real world. Like if you go to your phone and scroll through your photos, maybe that's kind of like a virtual photo album you recognize, like when you scroll the pictures, or you get it in a specific like frames or stuff, and going in a PDF document and highlighting stuff. That's kind of like going with a bright marker and marking it. So it's this matching between the system and the real world. So this user control and freedom. So users generally makes a lot of mistakes, and you should make it easy for the user to go back or undo stuff, because it's kind of a nice thing to do to the user, and let them have control over, like let's say a big download. They started it, but they changed their minds. Like, don't make them wait 40 minutes if they don't want to. Make them give them the choice to cancel the download, or if they throw away an important mail by accident, help them by having an undo button, or like make them retrieve the mail back from the trash can. So consistency and standards. Users should not have to wonder whether different words, situation, or actions mean the same thing. Follow a platform convention. So this is pretty clear looking at a system like the Microsoft Suite or something. That they found a pattern and they stuck to it in all their products, and that's easy for the user to. If you worked with Word but never worked with let's say Publisher, perhaps you recognize stuff from working at these different systems, and that makes the user comfortable using your systems. Another example could be a mail client. Like, they're pretty much similar. You expect like a menu to the left maybe with certain an inbox, a sent folder, a draft, and stuff. They follow a pattern and a standard that's out there. And a bad real-world example of this is door handles, and it's a pretty typical example that's often brought up, like people trying to push doors that you should pull, and it gets embarrassing sometimes. That's just a bad design. Someone should make those handles. You shouldn't have to think about those handles; it just work automatically. So this one is a kind of tricky one, recognition rather than recall. I added this huge quote because I tried to understand what this point meant, but it's kind of hard. So, help to minimize the user's memory load by making objects, actions, and options visible. The user should not have to remember information from one part of the dialogue to another. Instructions for use of the system should be visible or easily retrievable when appropriate. So an example of this could be, I guess, like going back and forth between sites and having like some menu that the user should recognize and know that they can navigate through, or maybe on Google, like suggesting different options to the user to let them know, like this, you can search for this. It's like giving them the option and not having the user remember everything. So this one, error prevention. So as I said, user makes a lot of errors, but better than having errors pop up is to design in a way that user can't make the errors. And this is an example from a flight booking page. You can see, like, if you have a start date and an end date, it forms like this pattern that combines these dates, and you can see that the flight is like, you can book this if you want. But if you try to book on the 20th, but you want to go home on the 18th, so you want to go back in time, that shouldn't be possible really. And this system kind of prevents that in a nice way, and that stops the user from doing stupid mistakes. And you should have these to help the user, and also like in forms, tell user what they need to add before you make them click on like a save button or request something from them, and then give them an annoying error. Like, do that before and prevent the error instead. 7, flexibility and efficiency of use. So we have these accelerators like hotkeys, and it's a good thing to integrate this in your system or website, because this is a way to cater both for the inexperienced and the experienced user, because having these keyboard shortcuts like on Slack, for example, can help like a power user to speed up their process. If they use this tool every day and learn these commands, it can really help them be faster in their in the way they interact with the system. And that's a nice thing. And this doesn't take away from the less experienced users. They can still click around and do stuff in a slow way. And Photoshop is also a good example of flexibility. You can pretty much customize Photoshop in the way you want it. You don't have to like have the menus on a certain place if you don't want. You can move everything around and customize your dashboard. So 8, aesthetics and minimalist design. So dialogues should not contain information which is irrelevant or rarely needed. Every extra unit of information in the dialogue competes with relevant units of information and diminish their relative visibility. This is also a quote, but I don't have it on my screen. So this is the desktop version on the page I'm working on. I work on the mobile site, and that's a different site, but I think this is a pretty good example of a non-minimalistic design. But I think it's like 5 menus maybe, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. Yeah, there's a lot of menus and a lot of choices to make, and there's a huge banner here. You can't see it, but it's kind of swiping around every 7 seconds or something. And when preparing for this presentation, Elke asked me, can you add another example of a sports betting site that are like scaled down and minimalist, but I couldn't find it. So that's why it's a blank page, because I think like this industry, the sports betting and betting in general, they found their niche, and they like bombard the user with all this information and options to do like betting opportunities all over, and they think that's a good way to do business. So I haven't found any page like that, but a typical example that people brought up, tends to bring up in this topic is Google website. Like it's a search bar and nothing else, but I don't know if you can compare this site with Google, because it's kind of different amount of information and for different purposes, but that's black and white example, like something like this compared to Google.
Google has the I'm feeling lucky.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's kind of makes things a bit more involved, I guess. So 9, help the user recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. So this isn't a pretty nice error, and I don't think any user thinks so either. So try to do errors in plain language. Don't use codes or numbers like this. That doesn't mean anything for the user. And try to indicate the problem. I know from a developer perspective, it's hard to like give the user a good error message if you don't know yourself why the error appeared. Like there's a big possibility that the developers doesn't know the problem either. But you can try at least to pinpoint what the actual problem is and suggest a solution on what to do about it. So you should give a feedback what's wrong and in the language that user understand, and give them a possibility to go back or click the dialogue away or recover from the error. And the better choice is to prevent the user from making a mistake, but yeah, that's not always possible. So 10, help and documentation. So even though it's better to have the error prevention and the error dialogues and stuff, sometimes the user gets stuck and they can't really use the system without help. And in that way, you should have some manual or documentation for the user that should be easy to search. It should focus on the user's task. So if I'm on a product page on Amazon, for example, don't go to like a complete guide of using Amazon. Like go to the guide for using Amazon product page or something. Like try to narrow down the focus and list the concrete steps of what the user can do to prevent this. And don't make a huge guide because nobody will read it. So that's the last slide, or not the last slide, but the last heuristic. And I think I added this picture because I think it sums up what I talked about in a nice way. And if you want, you could have this like on your desk or something, and when you're implementing something, just quickly go through all this and see if you have like achieved a level of usability that's okay at least. But like I said, this is from '94, so something might be less relevant, but some things might be relevant still. Thank you for listening.